Everybody. Welcome to this special offering of Mindfulness Moments sponsored by Saybrook University and the Department of Mind Body Medicine. I'm Dr. Luann Fortune, and I'm the interim chair of the Department of Mind Body Medicine, and I'm joined today by many of our friends and colleagues for this special offering. We have a special treat for us today. I will be introducing Dr. Stephanie Shelburne, and Stephanie is actually an a graduate of Saybrook University with a PhD in mind body medicine from 2015. So
Mm.
I remember when Stephanie graduated. Stephanie has many talents. She is currently the executive director of the New England School of Bioenergetic Medicine and the UNC Foundation. Stephanie is passionate about helping people and finding deeper connections to themselves and the natural world. I would be remiss if I didn't add some of my own annotation on this because it has been my honor to know Dr. Shelburne since I joined Saybrook University myself in 2014 when she was a new student. And I remember the very first time we met together and your passion for food as medicine,
Yeah.
which is one of the many credentials you have. Stephanie is a consultant, she is a coach, she is an entrepreneur, she is an educator, she is a researcher, and she does Saybrook proud out there in the work that she contributes every day. I've also had the honor of working with her as an adjunct professor. She serves for us in a variety of different courses where she has expertise. And I first saw her present this information at Saybrook's community learning experience in August in California. I'm so impressed by the work that she is doing because I know that nature and food and the natural order of the world is also a passion for her. Stephanie, thank you for being with us today, and I will hand it over to you.
Oh my gosh, thank you very much, Luana. It's just now I have to take a minute and get here. Um, yeah, it is a beautiful thing to represent Saybrook out in the world and feel so connected to so many passionate people that are just doing amazing and beautiful things. Okay. So I think I'd like to start. Obviously, nature is a passion. Connecting with nature is a passion. And one of the reasons that we began developing the school was to help people develop higher levels of coherence and connection to themselves and to the natural world, as Luann said, Dr. Fortune said. Um, but that also required like figuring out what's what does that actually mean to help people create deeper connection and greater levels of coherence, and really try to understand the current mindset and the different things that seem to be happening around people and connection to nature. Not least, there was a very interesting thing that seemed to happen during COVID, right? There was this interesting connection that people seemed to be expressing about being able to spend time at home or in nature, in the natural world, in ways that they hadn't been able to before because they were busy at jobs or doing whatever. And so there was this resurgence of interest in getting out into nature. But as I was looking through the research, it seemed like there was a resurgence of this idea of being entertained by nature. Um, so one of the things that we ended up asking ourselves is like, what is that question? Like, what do we mean as a society, when we are connecting with nature? What are we actually trying to say? What are we expressing? Sorry, my thing is not going. There we go. And the word connection, what is it actually expressing? So we wanted to ask some deeper questions. And part of what we were looking at, here are some of the research I didn't have in the presentation uh, in California. So I wanted to throw these in because this was kind of helping us frame. I started looking at some of the more recent research around this idea of like not just we all know that being in nature, there's a lot of research demonstrating that being in nature or having access to green spaces or having access to getting out into the natural world is good for our health. It's great for our emotional well-being. It appears it seems to be very good for anxiety, depression, all of the things that we can suffer from in a lifestyle when our lifestyles are restricted from the natural world. When we get back out into it, it seems like we benefit. But the thing that I wanted to really look at was, again, that idea of what does that mean? Are we just going out into the natural environment and participating from an entertainment perspective? And then if so, then how does that make it different than going to a movie or doing something else that might be relaxing? Like what else is happening in the natural world when we take ourselves out into the natural world and begin to feel what we might call connection or not connection? These are some of the studies that I found looking specifically from the perspective of that deeper perspective, from a psychologically deeper perspective. One of the first ones really explored the idea of connection, that word connection, and creating physical connections within nature, and really looking at the way people were talking about being connected. And then also looking across, it was like a meta-analysis, looking at across the gamut of research and this conversation of connection to nature from different demographics and different age groups. And one of the things that it found specifically that I'd like to do future research on was that children seem to be less left out of the conversation around connection. And I feel like that's the place we actually really need to begin leaning into, is like, how do we get into children's lives and kind of reframe this perspective of just being in nature as opposed to being with nature and experiencing higher levels of connection. So that was one of the reasons I really wanted to pull this study into this research and kind of let it inform the framework and the background. Then another study, this Fatima and colleagues, looking at the connection to country in the Indigenous world in New Zealand and Australia, and their idea of caring for country, and really expressing this difference between again, this idea of like, oh yeah, when I have access to nature, when I have access to green spaces, I feel better, as opposed to, no, when I actually am caring for country, when I'm actually caring for the land and I'm in connection and I have this different relationship, the markers are very different that show up. The markers for health are very different. So really looking from the perspective of their Indigenous culture, how to reintroduce what has kind of been taken away or has been morphed into a different framework, reintroduce the idea of actually caring for country as opposed to just being in nature. So I felt that was a very compelling one to also hold as a framework. Then the next one was sort of an overview again of just this perspective of what happens when we have nature exposure and health, like what happens for people. It has some really great markers of from the health perspective of like vasovagal response and sort of heart rate variability. And so it's a great one for just looking at a basic framework of what happens to us when we are out in the natural world and we feel safe and we're just enjoying nature. What happens to us on a physiological level. Then I wanted to pull in, of course, Shinrin Yoku, the idea of forest bathing, because it's becoming very popular, right? And when it's held in its actual framework, it's very popular for very good reason, right? So it's the idea not just that we're going into a natural world, into the forest or natural places and being mindful, but that we're actually engaging all of our sensory experience. So it's more than just kind of being present, it's this fully multidimensional sensory experience of being with the natural world. So it's another place that's sort of a great framework to begin understanding this idea of being with. So it also became part of the lit review framework for our study that we'll look at. And then again, understanding a unified or looking at a unified understanding of human nature interactions. This particular study also discusses this idea of shifting the perspective from just enjoying the natural world to actually being connected in a different way, being in relationship. And what does that look like for people when they're actually in relationship? So this is the underpinning of some of the questions that we began asking and the study that we began to pull together. So the main questions we started to ask were, what does it mean to be in nature, as opposed to what does it mean to be with nature? We wanted to gather some background documentation to explore more deeply. So we actually put together a poll from online for one of our sister organizations, Live Life Resources, looking at what do people, do they like, love nature, first of all? And then if they do, they get to go to the next question, which is, what do you love or like about nature? Very simple poll. If they answered no to that first question, we just said thank you very much and they moved on. So it was an online poll put up on our website and then shared through social media. And we were actually very pleasantly surprised to find that we had 897 people respond to that poll. And out of those 897, 97% did indeed like or love nature, which we were like, hooray for that, hooray nature. But then we found next, 94% of those individuals expressed enjoyment of an activity as their source of like or love. So in essence, the idea of kind of the activity in nature or recreation or entertainment was what they loved or liked about nature, which is great. But it was also like, okay, how do we take that deeper? Then we also had 6% of that group of the 97% that said we like or love nature because we are part of nature. We are in relationship with nature. And they express this sort of other perspective of their connection to the natural world, which we found heartening, and also then helped us move forward with this conversation about what's the difference between being in nature and being with nature. And because this is a passion for me, I then went forward and pulled together a heuristic inquiry because I wanted to explore the living experience of being with versus being in nature and start to create, kind of start to close the gap on this question of perspectives. And do we protect and care for nature because it's a source of entertainment? Or do we protect and care for nature because it's our sacred partner? And so how do we move people from that place, from one space to the other, so we can have this deeper sense of stewardship and partnership and connectivity, and therefore protection for our own health and the health of the natural world. So I employed 6, I didn't employ them, they were employed. I gathered 6 co-researchers, females between the age of 25 and older, all of them expressing a deep desire to explore this nuanced perspective, expressing that there was a difference within their mind and their feeling between being with and being in, and feeling that they had a very deep relationship, but wanting to understand how to go deeper. So we used heuristic inquiry, which, if you're familiar with that, the framework is a very deeply involved self-exploration, introspection. The first thing that we do is we follow the heart's call, right? We engage very deeply with the question. What is it that we're passionate about, that we're trying to explore? And within that framework, it's also, the next question is, how is this also useful to the world? Where is the benefit? How does this touch others in the world? So there's that grounded framework behind a heuristic inquiry. So we're engaging in the main question, and then we just immerse in this and we live this question daily. From there, we allow it to sort of incubate. We can step away from the question and we kind of just let it go. And this is, to me, one of the most exciting spaces. And it feels, it's like a natural occurrence. It's an organic arising when we start, when I'm in heuristic inquiry, I come completely away and I'm just like, okay, I don't need to touch on this subject anymore. And then after a little bit of time, I'll notice this sort of percolating thing starts happening, and suddenly new insights come up. new ideas, new passions, new things arise. So that is what we would call the point of illumination. And we would come back and engage the question again. And this is where we begin to start extracting what we've gathered and extracting our themes and bringing together the data in a way that is not just sort of a quantitative data or a qualitative data, but it's also ends up being pulled together in this creative way. So at the very end, there's also a creative synthesis that occurs after we've weaved together all the data and extricated our themes and expressed them. We also then get to move into this other space of creative synthesis. So that's heuristic inquiry, heuristic methodology. What we found is we ended up with 6 emergent themes: reciprocity, connection, security, peace, humility, and protection. So reciprocity as a sacred exchange. So these were some of the pieces that came together from the co-researchers' exploration. So there was this idea of taking mutual nourishment, that nature became a partner, a teacher, a recipient of care, and giving care in turn. So there was this definite reciprocity, right? This give and take. Gratitude is breath, giving and receiving. Stewardship naturally arises and then we feel held. Cycles of healing for self and planet. Now, the interesting piece, this young woman, Amelia, when I breathe into the forest, when I breathe in, sorry, I can't even read it. When I breathe into the forest clean air, I feel a need to give back, sometimes by picking up trash or even whispering a thank you. One of the things that touched me about what she shared in her interview was that I also was called to this deep love and partnership with nature through a similar experience. At one point, I was hiking on a very, very hot day. I went for a hike feeling I had a very distressing day, and I decided to go for a hike to clear my head. And when I got out on the trail up in Tilden Park, it up in Northern California, it kind of, you can see the expanse of the bay, and it's a really beautiful walk. But it was also the end of August, and it was extraordinarily hot. I hadn't brought water because I had decided to just head out in my distress. And I was really concerned. I was like, gosh, I don't know if I'm going to make the rest of this hike. I need to circle back around. And I came up over a crest and started to step down like this, what I would call, I guess, a little dell, and was suddenly just engulfed in this scent of eucalyptus and the coolness of the volatile oil from the eucalyptus just sort of washed over me. And even though the sun was still high, I felt like suddenly shade came over me. I felt reinvigorated. I just had this just beautiful moment of like these trees were saving my life. And so I stepped down into the grove and ended up sitting down on a rock with my back against one of the trees. And I just felt this moment of such a deep communion. And I fell into conversation with the trees. And it just was this very natural conversation. And they taught me in that moment, as I was just exhaling and inhaling and exhaling, this reciprocity of the exchange of breath, the gift of this exchange. And I had this insight of like, wow, in the world that we live in, we're so transactional, right? We have this third thing of money that decides what we can have or not have, and how we work with people or don't work with people. And yet here is this other thing that occurs in the natural world where we just exchange. And it isn't really transactional. It's just this beautiful sort of reciprocal give and take. So when Amelia shared her story in the interview, it was just really brought all of that back awake for me, and just felt really moving. And then we were able to connect. She and I were able to connect around that expression. So theme 2, connection as an unbreakable bond. Dissolving the illusion of separation. Connection beyond intellect, feeling this full-bodied knowing. So again, this goes back to the idea of Shinrin-yoku, right? Like this place of like, there's this multidimensional sensory experience that's beyond even just our 5 senses when we decide to be with something. Boundaries dissolve. This feeling, this sense of unity emerges. Nature connection as an antidote to isolation. So one of the women expressed that that's what she does when she feels lonely or isolated, which can happen even when she's in a crowd. Even then she's in a relationship, she can have these moments of feeling lonely. She goes down to the beach and sits and feels completely held and at one and fully supported in her relationship with nature, with the ocean. She feels never truly alone within this great web of life. So that was her expression, sitting on the shore, watching the waves come in and out, matching breath to that rhythm, and suddenly just feeling this connection through breath again, that there was no separateness between her and the ocean and the natural world. She was just one with everything. So the third theme, security and living sanctuary. Nature as an unconditional haven. And this one actually kind of came up. We weren't really, this one sort of popped up out of its own. We started noticing this was the last theme that we identified, even though we have it in place 3. Suddenly we realized through the interview and as we were extrapolating all the data and finding the information that there was just this undercurrent of expression of safety and protection. Like when we're in nature, we get to be ourselves. Nature doesn't judge us. So this is what the one woman was saying, like, if I just need a break, I just go into the garden because my garden doesn't judge me. And I don't feel, I just feel like I get to be there with my plants and we get to have this wonderful relationship. So earth has a safe space for vulnerability, acceptance in gardens, forests, and wild spaces, healing through nature's unconditional presence, and sacred space that's welcome to anyone and everyone. Now, interestingly, as I was looking through the data for the lit review, and I did come across several newer articles that were talking about nature being a dangerous place for people because they were going out and encountering either wild creatures or hurting themselves or these different things. And there's actually a growing body of research that demonstrating that maybe being in nature is dangerous. But I feel like that actually brings this question of, well, how are we being in nature? Are we being with nature where we're actually in this reciprocal relationship? And so we're more aware, we're more careful, we're using our senses to be more engaged in the natural world, or are we just in nature and we're in the modern world, people are forgetting how to engage with wildlife, how to understand, how to be respectful, or maybe aren't in a condition to go hiking. So I felt like that was one of the things to kind of look at, is this idea of like, when we're with nature as sacred partner, we pay attention differently and nature holds us differently. Like there's a different level of respect that happens. So theme 4, peace as an inner state of being. So peace as an actual living presence apart, not just being quiet or in stillness, but like this, again, multidimensional, all engulfing sense of what I also am calling coherence, right? When we're in these coherent spaces. Attuning to nature's rhythm soothes the soul. So paying attention to these, like what is the cycle when you're in, like, what are the sounds that we can hear? It's just listening to the various things that are occurring when we're able to just sit and be present with something. It is a portable sanctuary. You can carry nature's peace anywhere. So this is also where ideas of working with Eugene Gendlin's work on focusing or guided imagery or other ways to bring up people's connection to nature when they've had a deep experience. So again, going back to this idea of me and my experience with the eucalyptus grove, like that is one that I call forward many, many times, like that deep sense of being held and reciprocity. So, if I'm just sort of out in the world and maybe there's a moment where I'm feeling a little bit of distress or agitation or something, I can drop in and I can bring that into my center and feel again connected because of that experience. I can call upon it. So it is my portable sanctuary. Healing through resonance with earth cycles, when we are in tune with the rhythms of the season, the natural rhythms, the moon, the lunar rhythms, like we experience our own rhythms in a different way, a more healthful way, I believe. So the theme 5, humility and sacred vastness. So again, when we're in that level of connection, and there's a way we are outside of ourselves, right? We suddenly realize, wait, it's this interesting dichotomy or polarity of feeling expansive and yet very, very small all at the same time, right? Perspective, wonder, and awe under the vast skies. Humility as liberation from ego. My personal worries shrink away in a cosmic context. Awe as medicine for the spirit. I really love that one. Someone expressed that one in their interview. So lying on the ground and looking up at the sky full of stars, I can't help but feel small in the most beautiful way, was one expression in an interview. And I feel like, again, there's that idea of we can regroup ourselves. Like one of the things I shared this in the presentation in California also, but one of the things that I do when I really need to regroup, I step out at night and I look up at the moon and I just remind myself that every human that can see, every human through all of time has looked at this moon. What an amazing thing that is to stand there and look, and like every human has looked at this same moon, and that's amazing to me. And it just sort of reminds me of my place in the natural order of things, and I feel sort of realigned and reinvigorated. So theme 6, protection as a sacred duty. So this sense of guardianship, moving from just this idea of like, oh, I want to protect nature, I want to take care of it, but this deeper level of guardianship, partnered guardianship. Being nurtured by Earth awakens my protective spirit. Individual and planetary healing, it's one circle. It's like the health of the planet is the health of ourselves. And in some level, we really, really have to get that in a deeper way, a bigger way. Protection flows from relationship and love. So when we love something, when we're in relationship with something, we automatically rise up and we want to protect, right? We get that mama bear or papa bear energy going and we want to protect what we love. Environmental care born from connection, not guilt. So it's another piece that's really important. Like I think one thing that I encounter with people when we start talking about helping the planet, like this is what I love about Joanna Macy's work and the work that reconnects, is that this idea that one thing that people can encounter is a deep sense of guilt when they begin really looking at their life in comparison to what's happening in the natural world, and how do they bridge that gap, right? And so these small ways that we can invite deeper levels of relationship and reciprocity, we can kind of move past that idea and into just, okay, so how do we start from here and move more deeply into a sense of protection and care? So again, Amelia, when I take time to ground myself in the woods, I realize how tending to my own health, my rest, my breathing, my nourishment mirrors the way I care for the forest. So it's an invitation. If I care for myself more deeply, it is a way that I also then care for other. Oop, come back. I often feel a gentle responsibility when I'm in wild places. It's as if the peace I find here isn't just for me. I take it as a call to action. Come on. Call to action. There it is. So this was our creative synthesis. At the end, we all together created a short poem. I stand, feet to earth, heart to sky. Who am I? Cosmic child, housed in nature's body. Without you, I am nothing. Entwined, we are we, beloved. So the conclusion, the findings suggest that the distinction between being in nature and with nature is a critical one for well-being. So from our perspective, one thing that we are working quickly and deeply to integrate is different levels of training and programs and outreach so that we can really begin to invite this idea of deeper connection into more spaces with more people, in different ways, in different ways, partnering with other organizations, offering more, bringing things into, again, for school children, like bringing things in, this idea of reciprocity, partnership, sacred partnership, inviting that into more conventional areas and arenas. Themes of reciprocity, connection, security, peace, and humility provide a map for others seeking to cultivate their deeper relationship. And by shifting our perception and engaging with nature as a conscious living partner, we then open ourselves to a wellspring of wisdom and healing. The implications of this study are far-reaching, suggesting that our personal healing is directly interconnected to planetary healing, and they are inextricably linked. So the take homes, nature is always reaching out for relationship with you, always. Begin right where you are. Listen for what calls you. The wisdom of presence, trust, and reciprocity is waiting. Your unique journey entwines with the earth's healing. Which just brings us back around to the question, what does it mean to be in nature? And what does it mean to be with nature? Thank you.